Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Before we jump into this conversation today, just wanted to thank quickly our main sponsor of the episode, Foundation Software, for making this episode possible. All right, let's jump into the show. Hello again, this is Mike Merrill. I'm your host of the Mobile Workforce Podcast, and we are back again this week in a nice panel discussion with the team over at Payroll for Construction. We talk a little bit deeper into integration and what it means to truly integrate and connect multiple systems together, not only the payroll side of things, but also with your job cost accounting system, and then also any mobile apps that you might be using to collect data out in the field. So I think you'll really enjoy this one. Again, we had Alex, Jim, and Jessica back on from the Payroll for Construction team over at the Foundation Software Company. I think you'll really enjoy this one as well. All right, so Jim, last week we talked about the differences between in-house and outsourced payroll processing. Can you just give us a quick 2-minute overview for those who haven't listened to last week's episode on what we discussed?
Sure. Thanks again for having us back, Mike. Appreciate it as always. So in-house payroll is going to be where you're relying on somebody internally, staff, yourself potentially, where you're doing your payroll through some type of an accounting system. You're handling and overseeing the paying of employees, be it via check or be it the direct deposit. You're handling making sure that your city, state, federal taxes are paid accurately and in a timely fashion. Come the end of the quarter, doing your quarterlies, your W-2s. If any employees have wage garnishments or anything like that, making sure that those get to the correct agencies in a timely fashion. So you're taking your payroll by the reins and you're making sure it happens, or an employee of yours is. Whereas outsourcing payroll is shifting that to a third-party company where they're going to be able to go ahead and handle that for you, relieve you of the liability, save your company time. We talked a bit about, how do you find the right payroll service and how do you know if it's time to outsource? It just depends. Could be turnover, could be somebody didn't make a tax filing on time and a penalty blew back where you as the owner of that business had to pay for that. Could be just compliance reporting, a lot of things. But and we urge folks to, hey, if you don't think there's a construction-specific payroll service out there, there definitely is one, So, reach out and make sure that you do your due diligence, see demonstrations, and really, again, construction company A versus B versus C, well, they all are construction companies, could be night and day differences as to what their needs are. So that's where, interviewing companies, getting references, doing multiple demonstrations is key to finding, one, is outsourcing something that would benefit your business, or does doing it in-house make sense for you? And two, if I am going to outsource my payroll, making sure I find the right vendor, because change is no fun for anybody for anything, especially payroll. And the last thing you want to do is make a change and have to make another one there shortly down the road.
Great. Yeah, that's a great baseline to bring us up to speed with last week's discussion. Thank you for that. So now I wanted to focus on something just a little bit different. Jessica, maybe you could share from your perspective, what should a company be looking for from their accounting system that they're going to feed this payroll data into when they're using an outsourced payroll service?
You really want to look for software that is capable of meeting your needs. That is going to vary based on, what type of company you have. How many, states are you working in? Do you have union employees? Do you do prevailing wage work? You really want to take into account your individual needs. Is job costing important to you? Do you need a service that can provide you an accounting software that can provide you with the job costing, the payroll, all the reports you're going to need for financials? And so there's a lot of things to consider.
Love that. Jim, did you have something to add on that?
Cool. So construction specific all the way. Again, just depends. If you're a contractor who doesn't have needs of multi-state, union, or detailed job costing financial information, sure, you're, off the shelf, out of the box software may do. But again, depending on the size of the company and as you grow, you're going to want to look for what fits you best. You do a lot of time and material billing. You do. That payroll feeds into that. You're going to want a software that can do that. Same with, you do AIA billing and stuff like that. Those are the types of things that you're going to want to make sure that you have a software that can completely handle not just payroll, but running your entire business. And usually you find that when you start looking at softwares that from day one, the ground level of that software being developed, it was built with nothing but construction in mind.
Great point. Yeah, I think most of our listeners would agree with that. QuickBooks is wonderful if you're just getting started and you need somewhere to put your financial data. But outside of that, as it relates to construction, it's just not built to handle and have the horsepower that a contractor really needs to run their business efficiently. So Alex, in your opinion then, what do you think are some of the services that construction companies should be looking for from that outsourced payroll service?
Yeah, with that service, they should be looking at what's going to meet their needs with their type of work that's being performed by their team. So one, if we're a union contractor, hey, we have that union contract that we need to track the paying of our employees as well as those union benefits, deductions, and fringes that go along with that union payroll. So finding a service that can, one, track those union employees as well as track where we stand with those benefits so that we can then report that back to the union. On the other side, if you're a prevailing wage government contractor where, hey, we already have those above scale rate of pays that we have to pay our employees. Now, we might also have commercial and government prevailing wage work going on at the same time. So being able to have a service that can track the different pay rates that our employees may be working against in that specific week for those specific projects. And then also with that service is the construction specific reporting, the biggest part of construction payroll. So are they going to be able to handle those certified payroll reports? And with those certified payroll reports, we have print formats as well as electronic online formats that we're starting to see the industry shift towards as well. So can that service handle those type of certified payroll reports, as well as with those certified payroll reports? Is that service providing it through their service, or are they saying that they can handle it and it's going to be some sort of third-party add-on, some bolt-on, another company that they're working with for those certified payroll reports? So with the service search, look at, hey, what are our biggest needs when it comes to the payroll, the biggest complications, and find a provider that's going to be able to meet those specific services that their team needs when it comes to their payroll runs.
Beautiful. Jim, did you have something else to chime in on that as well?
Yep. And I think this will tie and hit home with WorkMax folks as well. Integration. If you are going to move your payroll out of your accounting system, one of the biggest fears and one of the things you need to confirm and really dig into is the word integration. It's like WorkMax and Foundation. I mean, you can upload time cards. That, to some people, that's integration, but pushing employees, jobs, cost codes back and forth. Again, integration is a very loose term. You want to make sure you're going to outsource payroll and a company tells you, I can integrate with your accounting software. Okay, don't stop there. How? What data is going back and forth? Because what you envision and usually the end result is usually a night and day difference. So making sure that, and that goes back to kind of last week's podcast as well, where we talked about, what are some of the things that prevent people? The fear of, well, hey, I don't want to do payroll over in this payroll service. And all of a sudden, poof, all my accounting, my financials, my general ledger, my job costing is just gone. You can't have that. So that's some of the things that do prevent people from doing it. So find a service that can integrate with your current ERP accounting system, and make sure when they say integrate, you find out what, because if it updates your financials, but all your job costing data is gone, or they tell you, well, don't worry, we have some job cost reports you can run. Great. What about material, purchase orders, subcontracts? Payroll is a huge part of the labor expense, the job costing. It is not the only part of it. So that data doesn't push back to get you that full scope picture. You now have your business basically in two different sections. I have financials, material, and stuff here, payroll here. That's a bit of disconnect that can be troublesome for companies.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow, so many things to think about. So Jessica, in your mind, are there any things you would add to what Jim and Alex shared on that the company should be looking for in a more construction-specific payroll provider?
I think Jim and Alex did a great job talking about the reports. I think another thing to take in mind is, can they give you an accurate payroll? Can they handle, employees that maybe are in a union, but their fringes and deductions need to go to a different union based on a job? Can they handle employees that change trades? Things that are very specific to the construction industry. Yeah, they can get them paid, but can they get them paid properly and accurately?
Yeah, that's the key to everything, right? That's the goal. So what about, let's just take a step back and ask Jessica, what exactly is involved in this process? I mean, what's the overview of how a payroll service actually works?
Typically, it starts with clients gathering their time card data. So I will just kind of run through a basic weekly payroll. They submit that information to their outsourced provider, whoever that may be. That provider can handle direct deposits. They can handle, shipping checks if need be, or giving, their clients access to print those checks in-house. They're going to handle all of your tax filings. So a lot of conveniences that will save you time. And, when all is said and done and it's processed, if you have the right software and the right service, you're going to get all those great reports that Jim and Alex were talking about.
Love it. Oh, that's great. It's a nice bow to put on the top of this wonderful improvement that companies should and need to be making in order to streamline what they're doing and ultimately have more profitability, be more efficient with their time, have those resources that they've earned and worked very hard and diligently to earn, and be able to keep more of them in their own pocket. So, well, thanks again for another wonderful conversation. I think just to wrap things up for today's discussion, let's start with Jim. What do you think you hope the listeners walk away with today?
Just kind of the differences of in-house versus outsourced payroll. Again, I go back to even a little bit repetitive of last week's, but just doing your due diligence and making sure that this service is going to work with multiple things. Again, if you're going to outsource, is it going to integrate with your accounting system? If you have a mobile application in place like WorkMax, is it going to integrate with that? And going to that next level of integration. Again, can it import time cards? Sure. But some services maybe, hey, I have to set employees and jobs up in multiple areas. You start creating, if you don't really dig into that integration question with the different softwares or services you're going to try to connect with this outsourced payroll service, it's one of those things where, you may find yourself saving time by outsourcing, but you may be little by little adding up little duplicate points of entry. And I always say duplicate points of entry, one, they're time consuming, but they just leave a lot of chance for error. Like Jessica was saying, like, hey, your union, you deal with multi-union where employees could change union jurisdictions. Are you having to manually change that in the time card? Or do you have a mobile app like a WorkMax or a payroll service like a Payroll for Construction that can actually control these things by job? In construction, value the employees. We need the employees. They're what keeps us going. But a lot of contractors, the job is kind of what dictates a lot of things that happen with payroll. So if your payroll service out there wants you to store everything in the employee's record, you're working in multiple states, prevailing wage or multi-union, you're going to find yourself, again, somebody paying your employees in taxes, but the same things you're dealing with inside of QuickBooks, manually changing, manually overriding, manually doing these reports, you're going to be doing that as well, where in all actuality, there is a service out there like ours that not only takes care of paying the employees in taxes, but I always say the beginning of payroll and all those changes based on where they're working and what they're doing. In the end of payroll, that compliance reporting, if you really look out there, you can find somebody like us to do that.
Beautiful. All right. What about you, Alex? What do you hope they take away with from today's conversation?
Yeah, from today's conversation, I hope that people take away that, again, kind of going back to last week, don't be afraid to make that change, but also knowing what you need to get out of that change. Go into those conversations, knowing your team's needs. What reports do we need? What type of payroll runs do we have to have handled for our team? Going back to that union prevailing wage payroll runs. And so just going into those conversations with the providers of what your team needs for those payroll runs. And don't be afraid to ask questions. So hold multiple conversations with those providers. Look at multiple services, multiple providers out there. And like Jim had mentioned too, don't be afraid to ask for references. Hold conversations with those clients that are already using that provider or also going through the same processes that your team is going through as well, but on that provider that we're looking to switch into. So just knowing what their needs are for their team, having that expectation set out of what their needs are going to be, and going into that conversation to do the entire due diligence of looking into the full process of what they can expect on that specific service, and also talking to those that are already using that service provider, what their day-to-day is like. So there's no surprises when it comes to that first live payroll run after that change there.
Beautiful. All right, Jessica. In this case, ladies last. What do you think?
Wow. Thanks, gentlemen. I think the biggest takeaway is whether, you're doing your payroll in-house or you are outsourcing, is finding the right software. Finding software that can automate things for you to help you save that time, that can do things accurately, get you that right, correct reporting, and that provides good support. As someone who has worked with, clients extensively over the years, part of it is not just picking a software and a service provider, it's picking the right support for you. Your software and your payroll service is only as good as the support you can get and the help you get from it.
Yeah, beautiful thought to end on. That's fantastic. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you all. Another great panel discussion. I think we nailed it on the overall perspective of some compelling reasons that companies need to make these changes or should heavily consider them. I hope we've been impactful for the listeners today. And again, thanks, Jessica, Jim, and Alex for joining us, and we'll look forward to catching up again down the road.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.